Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kwani Has Questions. I'm Kwani, but today's guest is Frank McCourt Jr. from Boston, entrepreneur, philanthropist. We'll get into all of the nitty gritty, but thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's nice to be with you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a great day. We're almost at Friday, so I'm doing very well. Thank you for
Good.
asking. I'm going to actually start off the top with your book. You obviously have done a lot of things over the years. We're going to get into some of that as well. But one of the initial things that we talked about was your new book. It's titled Our Biggest Fear: Reclaiming Liberty, Humanity, and Dignity in the Digital Age, which the irony of this is that we're streaming this online. But I wanted to just get a sense from you. What exactly sparked you to write this book?
Yeah, well, the title of the book is actually Our Biggest Fight, and and the reason I wrote Our Biggest Fight is to bring attention to Project Liberty, which is a $500 million initiative to reimagine how the internet works, and reclaiming control of our personhood and our data on the internet from the machines of big tech. So it's really about changing the way the internet works and doing so in a way, by the way, that this time around, we're not just letting the technology lead the way, but we're bringing social scientists together with the computer scientists to have a better design this time and a better architecture for the future internet.
What would you say, from your perspective right now, is the biggest flaw of the digital era?
The biggest flaw is something that was created to be a powerful, decentralized, empowering technology, the internet, was really hijacked by the app age, which started roughly 20 years ago, where our information was vacuumed up and scraped and collected by a few large platforms and aggregated, and then algorithms applied to it that begin to change the way we interact with the internet. And it became, rather than being a decentralized and empowering and tool for human beings and society generally, it became a centralized, autocratic, and surveillance-based technology. So, words that one would not typically use to describe democracy. And so we have a technology that's being used in ways that is very different than how our political system and our is built, and the human rights that system protects.
So that being said, I think there's obviously many layers to it when you think about the digital era and the digital the algorithms that you mentioned, the corporations, the way that they're capitalizing on them. One thing that stood out to me, and I'm curious what you think about it, is the fact that mental health is probably one of the biggest factors when you think about the way people use the internet and the effect that it can have on individuals. So from your perspective, was that in consideration, or was that part of your concern when you think about the digital era?
Yeah, well, as the father of seven children, it's a I'm deeply concerned about the impacts on children, and it's a very big part of this journey, and we talk about it in great detail in the book. The harms now to young children caused by the not by the internet per se, but by the way the internet is being used, and the way these platforms have evolved, and now the predatory nature of these platforms is of grave concern. And I think, I see it, I hear it, I'm sure you see it and feel it and
Absolutely.
hear it. I mean, we're it's I'm not telling you or your listeners anything they don't already know. I mean, we
Right.
see the impacts on young people and how they're struggling. And I would say our foremost responsibility as adults is to protect children, right, and
Mhm.
protect the next generation. And we're failing at that right now, because a tool we all depend on, that's omnipresent in our lives, is actually designed to prey on young people and
Mhm.
to impact young people in harmful ways. So I think if if there's one thing that's going to be the alarm bell that goes off, or the call to action, it's actually going to be parents, and I would say moms in particular, rising up and saying, this is doing harm to our children and it needs to stop.
And very related to it, very timely. On Wednesday, yesterday, a new study showed that Americans specifically, happiness is not, they don't, the US no longer ranks in the top 20th happiest countries in the world. Obviously, this is not only affecting the United States, but do you have any perspective as to again, assuming that the digital social media, especially young kids, were part of that, younger people were a part of that study. How do you think that may relate to it?
Well, I think what's happened is, uh, Kwani, if I was the postmaster general, and I said, I have an idea for you. I'm going to deliver your mail for free, no more stamps, and you'd say, okay, tell me more. All right. In exchange, I want a camera in every room in your house and in your car and in your workplace. You'd kind of react and say, that's kind of creepy,
No,
right? I
thank
don't
you.
really like that. And then
Yeah.
I'd say, well, yeah, it's free though, right? And I'd say, one other thing, by the way, I'm going to open your mail and I'm going to read it, and your relationships are now mine and your ideas are now mine. I'm going to profit from them and so forth. And you'd probably say, well, that's not fair. And then I'd say, well, one other thing, I'm going to read your young child's diary, your young daughter's 13-year-old's diary, and I'm going to see what her insecurity is, just like every 13-year-old has one. And maybe hers is weight, right? And so now I have things I'm going to sell your 13-year-old daughter. And more importantly, and more harmfully, I'm going to make her feel worse about her insecurity. I have stuff information that is going to make her feel terrible about it. So now we have creepy technology that's not fair, that's also harming children. So when do we say enough is enough? And there's no way that you would take those free stamps if if that was the trade. But that's
Yeah.
exactly the trade we've made.
So I'm a millennial, so I understand the analog era, as we would call it. I grew up on the rotary phones and the dial-up, like the era of like right before dial-up. So I still understand, in a sense, what life was before the blow up of the digital era. But from your perspective, I'd love to have an intervention, so to speak. How would you talk to not only the millennial generation, but Gen Z, which is part of that demographic that you mentioned of the parents having to protect them? What would you do if you could to help make sure that this doesn't take control the way that it's trending towards?
I would say regain control of your data, because it's not actually this abstract, worthless thing. It turns out it's very valuable, and but more importantly, it's who you are in the digital age. It's your personhood. So let's stop thinking about it as data and start thinking about it as personhood. Everything about you, in this day and age, virtually everything about us is now collected, stolen from us, I would say, and used for others to manipulate us and make money and so on and so forth. Why would we allow that to happen? Don't I think young people want control of their lives and want agency and choice and liberty as much as someone my age, and so you don't have to um, necessarily have lived in a different age and understood, as you said, before the internet. We all understand that the world functioned in a bit of a different way. I think we have to realize again that we're all real people with real experiences and real lives, and we want real relationships and real community. And I think what we're seeing is this technology that kind of promised us this idea of connectivity and community and so forth is actually isolating us and exploiting us. So I would ask young people to especially to read Our Biggest Fight. Take a few hours of your precious time, read it, and learn about how you're being taken advantage of, and economically for sure, but more importantly, how it's impacting your lives, your relationships, and your ability actually to enjoy life and be happy and be productive. And so we have a tool that could make people's lives far, far better,
Mhm.
or as it's doing now, make it worse. So let's choose the path to better, because we can fix this. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to have the good stuff that the internet brings us, and social media platforms bring us, along with the bad stuff.
Right.
We can just have the good stuff and
Yeah.
eliminate lots of the bad stuff.
So I did this interview a little backwards. Usually I start with who are you? Let's get to know you. But I really wanted to talk about this book, hence why we started. But for our viewers and our listeners, I do want to backtrack. You are from Boston. Your family actually, I was doing digging, traces back to the 1800s of being in this area. So, what exactly does the city mean to you?
Yeah, I'm a Bostonian, born and bred. And when
Hmm.
you're born and bred in Boston, you come with a particular worldview and a view of the country because it started here, and a view of our responsibilities. So I'm really happy to be back in Boston today, talking about our biggest fight and talking about this work because this is my hometown. This is what the community that formed me, and this is where our great country began. So this is a I'd love to see this, democracy that started here in Boston be rekindled here in Boston. And I think
Hmm.
that kind of spirit, that kind of spirit of individual rights and liberty and freedom and possibilities
Hmm.
is something really that is very, very much embedded in me because I'm a Bostonian, and I
Yeah.
think that those attributes are shared by many, many Bostonians. We're not people that shy away from problems, Bostonians,
Yeah.
and we don't necessarily always get it right, but we certainly are willing to give it our best shot.
So one thing when I was doing research for this, but also just obviously knowing your background, I think with the sports and digital, I was thinking about that intersectionality, and you're all too familiar with it, of course, with your ownership of Marseille and former ownership of the Dodgers. But I was curious from your perspective too, how do you see and how maybe have you used the internet when it comes to the way people follow sports, the way people look at the trends of what teams they're interested in, and how do you think that could possibly change or should change if needed?
Well, yeah. So personally, I'm not on social media because I've never felt it's a fair deal to give up
Yeah,
all my information just to use a platform.
platform.
But
Yeah.
of course, our companies use it, our sports teams
Hmm.
use it, and so forth because that's what's available to us.
Yeah.
And my view is we're going to be stuck in this conversation about the harms and the unfairness and the creepiness of it for a long, long time unless we
Mhm.
build an alternative, someplace where a better version. And that's what I talk about in the book. And so that's, as a builder, a fifth generation builder of infrastructure,
Mhm.
that's what I'm focused on. And we fix that by returning ownership and control of our data, of our information, of our digital footprint to us. So we want to regain, I believe, control of our relationships and everything we do online, and not let someone else take it from us, remove agency from us, strip us of our digital digital person, which is as important as our biological person in this day and age, and then use that information in ways that we don't permission or we don't even know how they're using it. So let's regain control of our data and have an internet for the first time where you're a person to use it and verified as such, and you control who gets to see your data on what for what on what terms and for what purposes. It's interesting. We're still a device on the internet. We're not a person on the internet. What's connected to the internet is our IP address, because this was an internet built to connect devices and then to connect data. I think the next phase of the internet will be about connecting people.
Okay, so you mentioned that you're not necessarily active on social media when it comes to sports in general, but how do you figure out what trends are? Obviously, there's still print journalism and other forms of getting information, but what is your preferred method of learning about, again, because Boston's a big sports town, which is why I bring it up. So, what is your form of staying informed and figuring out, or figuring out what's going on in
Oh yeah,
what
yeah.
is
My
generally the
point
digital?
was, yeah, my point is I'm not personally on
No, yeah,
social
no, that's
media,
yeah. Sorry
but
to clarify.
yeah,
Yes, I know that.
the but I have a presence on social media
Okay.
through the teams and so forth. So
Okay.
this is what's the current technology that's available to us, and of course we use it to stay in touch with our fans and stay in touch with and what's going on and what they're thinking and so forth.
Mm.
Sadly, however, a lot of the dialogue on social media gets dominated by extreme voices and voices that are not necessarily constructive voices. So we end up uh, getting the bad with the good. And I don't mean somebody who disagrees with an owner's decision or a general manager's decision. That's all.
Which
That's
is
sports.
natural.
That's the
Yeah.
fun part of it. I mean people using it as a platform to just to cause harm, right?
Mhm.
Just to do damage and to be the loudest voice and to perform as opposed to inform. And so it becomes more and more difficult to navigate the current platforms because of how the information gets corrupted and how the conversation sometimes gets co-opted by just the loudest voice, not the smartest voice or the most reasonable voice.
I understand. So that being said, the book is out. Obviously, we've talked about that as well. But any projects, anything, especially with Boston, connected to Boston, anything next for you on the general front?
Yeah, well, I'm like I say, happy to be here to talk about our biggest fight in Project Liberty, more specifically, which the book sheds light on.
Mhm.
And yeah, what I'm really interested in is as people digest this point of view and see this potential roadmap for a way forward, I would love to get people's reaction and their input. And they can do that by going to ourbiggestfight.com and sharing information and joining the fight and being involved if it resonates with people. And I'd love to, our construction company is still headquartered here in Boston, and
In the
we're very,
seaport,
very
right?
active here.
Yeah.
E- Excuse me?
In the seaport or the,
Yeah, in McCourt,
yeah,
McCourt
yeah.
Construction is located in the Seaport area, and then of course I would love to continue our building projects here in Boston of a real estate nature because, as I said, yeah, this is my hometown, and you can't take the Boston out of the boy.
Absolutely. Wait, so obviously I knew there was a history with the seaport as well of you wanting to have the Red Sox there in the past. Would that be something on the horizon for you, or at least obviously you can't control the way teams are sold and stuff like that? But is that something that you would, being a Boston kid, is that still a dream to have ownership here?
Well, many of my dreams have been fulfilled. I'm actually a very, very fortunate person.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I got to own a professional sports team, the Dodgers, one of the
On the
great.
wrong side of the country. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Believe me, I was pretty proud though when I got to bring the Dodgers into Fenway Park and play the Red Sox. My hometown team and the team I rooted for and so forth. But I don't know what the future holds, but I can tell you that I'm a huge sports fan and sports person, and it's been a big part of my life. And now, as the father of seven, it's a big part of my kids' lives. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and I love what sports meant to me and did for me growing up, both participating in it and then going and supporting, my hometown teams and so forth. So, yeah, the pursuit of the Red Sox, which didn't work out, led to the ownership of the Dodgers, which has now
Mhm.
led to the ownership of Marseille and European football. Which, if you want to see real crazy, go to
They
European
are.
football.
Those are real fans.
Yeah, it's and it makes it really, really fun. So, but right now, my biggest priority is Project Liberty and putting this point of view forward and putting some solutions forward because
Mhm.
I do know we're talking, thankfully, more and more about the problems caused by the current version of technology. How
Mhm.
big tech is using our information and how social media platforms are operating. And I think we can have, as I said, the good with far less of the bad.
Mhm.
But it really entails putting people back in charge of themselves
Yeah.
on the internet rather than having us manipulated by some big platform. So this is my passion right now, and this is my
Mhm.
focus.
Yeah, but quickly backtracking, just because you mentioned European football, and as someone, my parents are Haitian, so that I understand like the allure of football. Again, football outside of the United States. How did you get involved or interested in European soccer football?
Well, after selling the Dodgers, I had that boyhood dream fulfilled, and I kind of said to myself, if I ever buy another team, it's going to be in European football, European soccer, and the reason for that is that not only is it the biggest sport in the world, it's the sport that touches everybody everywhere, and Um, and baseball, fantastic sports, and a sport that I grew up with, but it's really America's national pastime, and it does touch parts of South America and parts of Asia, but it's not a global sport per se. Soccer is, and European football or soccer is the top. It's the top athletes in the sport, and so I was very attracted to that from a sports perspective, but also, owning a sports team, it gives you, access and connection to a lot of other people and places, because you realize sports are continue to be one of the things that help us build community and connect with other people. You can get into an automobile in any city and ask the driver, who their favorite football club is, or their
And you'll
team, and
hear from
suddenly,
them.
yeah, you're going to be in a conversation, and you're going to have something in common, and that's unfortunately, what social media platforms are doing right now is they're dividing us, as opposed to like finding those areas that we have in common, so we can actually get to know one another and build community. And it's interesting that you focus on sports, because it really is something where we know real life, right? How we interact and talk about sports,
Mhm.
and how it's a conversation that's generational. It
Yeah.
crosses, men and women, young and old, and it's great. And I think we can learn from that, and build community online that is actually more about the
Productive.
building than the tearing down.
Yeah, I have a sports background, hence why I was like, let's talk a little bit more. But final question for me, we talked a lot about the work that you do, but how do you see yourself outside of your business? I feel like a lot of times we become defined by what we do, but how would you describe yourself outside of your work?
I'm a dad. I'm a father of, proud father of 7 children, and I'm a husband with a great wife and partner, and yeah, that's how I define myself.
That's a statement in itself. Well, Frank McCourt Jr., I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about your story. And of course, your book, Our Biggest Fight, which people can catch here in Boston or wherever they're watching. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kwani. Nice to be with you.
You as well.